Good evening. After a two-day manhunt, 2 sleepless nights, law enforcement have apprehended Vance Bolter. That's 48 hours that law enforcement involved in a complex and dangerous manhunt. Spent Father's Day away from their families to deliver justice for Melissa and Mark Hortman and their children who spent this Father's Day alone. Spared no expense and no work to make sure that that happens. A moment in this country where we watched violence erupt. This cannot be the norm. It cannot be the way that we deal with our political differences. Now's the time for us to recommit to the core values of this country. And each and every one of us can do it. Talk to a neighbor rather than arguing. Debate an issue. Shake hands. Find common ground. This is who Melissa Hortman was. In the first negotiating session that I had a chance to work with her, she got all the partners in the room, and she provided each and every one of us a copy of a book called Getting to Yes. And the whole premise was debating with a sense of goodwill, a sense of trying to come to compromises that serve everyone. And because of her, we did that. Because of her, we did that year after year after year. That's the embodiment of how things are supposed to work. It's not about hatred. It's not about mean tweets. It's not about demeaning someone. It's leading with grace and compassion and vision and compromise and decency. That was taken from us in Minnesota with the murder of Speaker Hortman. So for each and every one of us to truly honor, and we will continue to honor that spirit, but we will need to do it in just more than actions in a memorial. Conducting ourselves in the spirit that Melissa Hortman did her work is what the country needs to heal.
To us as part of this investigation moving forward.
Sir, can I ask you, from CBS News, did the suspect have a phone with him when he was caught? Was he tracked in any way, or was it just society giving some tips?
At the end, the question was, did he have a phone with him? I don't have the specifics on everything that was with him when he was arrested at this time. I will say he was armed, and that he came when he was taken into custody, but we'll be sifting through all of that information from there.
Can you expand on weapons?
What's that?
Can you expand on
I can't on the weapons at this time, so Paul.
That's yet to come.
And Mark, those are the people that were on the list, what other, I know there are politicians from Wisconsin on this, what other states were people on this?
It was multiple states. I don't have the exhaustive list, but it was multiple states that were on there.
Do you have some states that were on the list?
We can, there's a few, I don't want to say it because it won't be exhaustive, but you know, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, some others that were on there. There was a variety in Nebraska, Iowa, we've had contact. What I will tell you, and I will not get into any more specifics beyond that, we are in coordination with our federal partners and our fusion centers in those states to coordinate with local law enforcement and the FBI in those states and the state fusion centers that are there to be able to provide that information and notify those individuals that they were on that list.
Are you concerned that there's other people out there? Are you concerned that there's other people out there that could have been working with them?
The question is, are we concerned there's other people out there that could be working with them? We will fully explore that. I've said on this, we are relatively confident, we are confident that the violence that he committed and the murders he committed and the attempted murders, that he conducted that activity alone. We will be exploring if there are any broader network. We have not uncovered any of that at this time, but that will be part of our investigation, and we will fully explore that. So thank you.
The bigger concern here is the Trump administration's response to crisis, right? We saw in St. Louis that it took 5 days for FEMA to come to the aid of people at St. Louis. We're seeing an antagonistic relationship between local elected officials and the Trump administration. My big concern is when the first big hurricane comes, will they be there and will they have the back of local officials when lives are on the line? What's interesting about what he's doing is not just what he's saying, but where he is saying it. He had an exclusive on the Midas Touch network with his address to the nation, with 2 million people seeing that. Midas Touch is getting 22 million views every 2 days. He had Brian Tyler Cohen, a YouTuber, into the Emergency Operations Center to do an interview. It just shows that I think he's learning the lessons, candidly, of 2024, that Democrats didn't do enough to communicate more to independent media, which I think is exciting. Look, I think if this is a president who wanted to honor the military, he wouldn't be proposing 80,000 VA cuts. this was a president who actually cared about the military, he wouldn't be freezing $2 billion worth of contracts or having a Secretary of Defense leaking attack plans on Signal. In contrast, we had people from Idaho to Ohio to Arkansas to Massachusetts stand up and say that this country, with due process being taken away, with children being separated from their mothers, is not something we stand for. People will not take this lying down, and this is just the beginning.
With us now is former Defense Intel Agency officer Rebecca Koffler. Rebecca, what are your thoughts tonight on the incredible symbolism and the messaging that we saw here tonight from the Commander-in-Chief on the Army's 250th birthday?
I am so excited, Emily and Lucas Tomlinson. Everybody, like, this is incredible. Finally, the United States is back. I want to really thank all of our Army, Navy, and Air Force officers who have been sacrificing their lives. Literally, their families have been contributing to the mission. Most of the time for the past quarter of a century, because of the mismanagement of the administrative states, they've been fighting these foreign wars. But with our new in chief, Donald J. Trump, they are prioritizing America first. And I want to thank these officers for all of these sacrifices and all of the hardships that their families have been doing. Lawrence Jones, you are doing, you're rocking, man. Like, you guys are fair. Lucas,
thank you.
I want to thank
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you, and thank you for your service, too. Well, our final thoughts on this historic and patriotic celebration when we return.
Can't wait.
Something that is so blatantly obvious as we start this week, and that's whether we're talking about the horrific shooting in Minnesota, the parade in Washington, or even the ICE protests in downtown Los Angeles. It is perception and imaging. And the reason I say that is because there's so much politics that comes into situations where really the politics shouldn't be what leads the story. With Minnesota, it was almost like there's an underlining, and you only needed to look at when the story first broke. If you went to anywhere that, how should we say, is a Fox News audience-leaning kind of ultra-Trump supporting Facebook or live stream, the comment section was horrific. Absolutely horrific. They're almost like supporting an assassinator, supporting murder, just because the politics of the person happened to be somebody they disagreed with, the victim. Because you're a Democrat, so it's okay for someone to shoot you. Absolute rubbish. And then you have the spin factory who look for anything to, if there's a crime or a headline, how can they spin it so it's, in this particular case, it's all pro-Trump and anti-Democrat. So, Tim Walz at some stage gave this guy a job. Didn't directly give his job, he happens to be governor. So if somebody gets a job of a political or government nature, and Tim Walz is governor, and then Tim Walz personally signed his job application form. Garbage. But you see, it's put out there into the Twitter sphere, so people can then, and on Facebook, people can share it to reinforce their beliefs they already have, that they don't like Democrats. I mean, it's not really that difficult to work out. But let's then move to the parade. And by the way, now the truth about Minnesota has come out. The Republican nature of the social media, anal end of what we see, has kind of hushed. But let's move on. The parade. The parade was meant to be a celebration. I feel that those who've given their service, which we respect and deeply honour, deserve better. I don't think they should be used as a backdrop to a punchline, to a birthday or whatever it was, or to a clickbait, as what it is, get a 10-second clip of something. So that was spun, and the perception of it is just leaves an uncomfortable taste in your mouth. And with regards to the LA riots, look, that is Los Angeles, all right? It's huge. California is huge. But it suits various different political people on social media just to say, look, the whole place is in flames, the whole of California is burning down. And people who should know better, like Ron DeSantis, try and minimize California into one little tiny area. Rubbish! As I said, perception and imaging. It's the danger. Thoughts? I could be wildly off of a track here. Comment section, all yours.
Because the public approval is so high of deportation.
But details matter. It depends, as you know, it depends on how you ask the question. If you ask the same people, do they think we should maintain due process in the United States of America? The answer is overwhelming yes. Do dreamers deserve better than the limbo that they find themselves in? Overwhelmingly, on a bipartisan basis, yes. And so I think it's important to break down three things. Number one, do we need a safe and secure, orderly, humane border? Absolutely. No disagreement there. People seeking to come to the United States, whether it's to seek asylum, on work visas, etc., we definitely have to modernize that system and be more strategic in those capacities. But we can't forget the millions of long-term residents, people who have been here, working, paying taxes, raising families, buying homes, contributing to the strength of our economy. They deserve better.
You are the ranking member.
Democrats say that Secretary Noem should resign. Is that where you are?
Look, that's maybe not my focus right now, but I do think there's some serious questions. How does the cabinet secretary not know the senator from California when she steps foot into Los Angeles? She came through the Center for confirmation at one point, and certainly, how does the Secretary of Homeland Security not know how to de-escalate a situation? It's because you can't or because they don't want to, and it sets the tone. Donald Trump and Secretary Noem have set the tone for the Department of Homeland Security and the entire administration in terms of escalation and extreme enforcement actions.
One last question.
Because the public approval is so high of deportation.
But details matter. It depends, as you know, it depends on how you ask the question. If you ask the same people, do they think we should maintain due process in the United States of America? The answer is overwhelming yes. Do dreamers deserve better than the limbo that they find themselves in? Overwhelmingly, on a bipartisan basis, yes. And so I think it's important to break down three things. Number one, do we need a safe and secure, orderly, humane border? Absolutely. No disagreement there. People seeking to come to the United States, whether it's to seek asylum, on work visas, etc., we definitely have to modernize that system and be more strategic in those capacities. But we can't forget the millions of long-term residents, people who have been here, working, paying taxes, raising families, buying homes, contributing to the strength of our economy. They deserve better.
You are the ranking member.
If diplomacy is not successful, and we left with the option of force, I would urge President Trump to go all in to make sure that when this operation is over, there's nothing left standing in Iran regarding their nuclear program. If that means providing bombs, provide bombs. If that means
busting bombs?
Whatever bombs. If it means flying with Israel, fly with Israel. The worst possible outcome for the world is to take the Iranian nuclear program on and leave it standing. That will be a disaster.
Senator Blumen.
Its offensive missile capacity, that the window to actually stop Iran from entering that zone of immunity was rapidly closing.
But why Thursday night? There seems to be a difference in this idea of a sprint.
Well, as President Trump said on Friday morning that he had given Iran 60 days to make a deal, and that was day 61.
Talks on day 63. You know that. I mean, this wasn't really a hard deadline.
He gave them 60 days, and on day 61, the strikes began.
Day 63, Steve Witkoff wanted to meet with him. But it
said the city would have, quote, burned to the ground without his aid. Do you think local officials had that situation under control?
Yes, I do. And, you know, let's call the president's statement what it is, and that's just a flat-out lie. The idea that Los Angeles would have burnt to the ground, it's absurd. These demonstrations were taking place in a multi-block area in a city that is 500 square miles. Our police and our sheriff's office and our highway patrol are more than capable of dealing with this. And if they won't, and they weren't, then the mayor and the governor would request the help of our guard. That was not done. It was not necessary. And I think this is just Donald Trump doing what he wanted to do in the first administration, which was essentially use the military for domestic law enforcement to make himself look tough. In the first administration, there were at least a few people in the cabinet of some independents who could say, no, Mr. President, that's a lawless idea, that's a stupid idea. But there's no one in this current administration to tell the president that's a stupid idea. It will make matters worse. And there are nothing but sycophants, the Stephen Millers and the Kristi Noems and all the rest of them. And so we are seeing this terrible escalation, this increasing lawlessness. The district court was right to find it lawless. Now that Marines are engaged in an arrest, at least one arrest and detention, then that will be challenged too, and I think that too will be found to be lawless.
Senator, do you want to see regime change? Do you think that happens soon? And what would the future look like in that regard?
Look, I think it is very much in the interest of America to see regime change. I don't think there's any redeeming the Ayatollah. He is filled with hatred. You know, I'll tell you a story that's a little bit amazing. The former head of the Iranian nuclear program, a man whom many say was sent to meet his maker by the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence forces. He had written in his last will and testament that he wanted the following words written on his tombstone. Here lies a man who sought to annihilate Israel. Maria, think of the level of bilious hate. When that's the only thing you want to be remembered for is I am such a bigot, such an anti-Semite, filled with so much hate that the entire purpose of my life is to murder as many Jews as possible. That's what we're dealing with, religious fanatics. So it is unquestionably in America's interest to see a secular regime. You know, before the revolution, Iran was a secular country that was an ally of America. I think the people want to go back to that.
And we want to...
You know, I'm all for the president appearing and doing enlistment ceremonies at military bases. I've been with the president at Dover to receive home our dead soldiers, and so those who have been killed in action, and to mourn their loss. But I just never liked the idea of the parade, because I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and the only parades I can remember are Soviet parades for the most part, or North Korean parades. And the parades I remember from our history were different. You know, everybody remembers that famous scene of the soldier, you know, dipping the girl and kissing the girl in New York in a ticker tape parade. But we were rejoicing the end of war, and we were rejoicing our soldiers coming home. And that absolutely ought to be commemorated and discussed every year, Memorial Day, Veterans Day. But we never glorified weapons so much. And I know he means well. I don't think he means for any of this to be depicted in another fashion, but I'm just not a big fan. And then there is the cost. I mean, we're $2 trillion in the hole, and just an additional cost like this, I'm not for it.
I do want to get, if Iran refuses this offer of the United States, I strongly believe it is in America's national security interest to go all in to help Israel finish the job. How do you respond to Senator Graham's call to go all in and help Israel finish the job, Senator?
Well, his initial response was game on, and I don't consider war to be a game. The hundreds of thousands of people that potentially will now die on both sides. You know, for a couple thousand years, we've had this discussion over what is just war. Not only our civilization, but other civilizations have had this discussion. And one of the things that many people came to a conclusion was that preemptive or preventative war wasn't just. And so there is that. But there is also the idea that what happens to Iran, you imagine what happens in Iran now. Do they coalesce around their government, even though their government is unpopular? Does nationalism thrive? And you would think that they would probably be less likely to want to negotiate at this time, particularly when they may feel that negotiations were a ruse to put them at ease until the bombing happened. So I think it's going to be very hard to come out of this and have a negotiated settlement. I see more war and more carnage, and it's not the U.S.'s job to be involved in this war. Iraq was a mess. Afghanistan was a mess. And one of the things I like about President Trump is he has shown restraint. And so I think his instincts are to not be involved in this war, but there will be a lot of pressure from Lindsey Graham and others to get involved in this war. And I hope that his instincts will prevail.
All right. The last time National Guard troops were federalized, by the way, that time, of course, that was at the request of the governor, not over the objections of the governor. That was in 1992. You were there. You were at the corner of Florence and Normandy when the 1992 riots erupted after that Rodney King verdict. Can you compare what's going on now to what happened then at all?
I really appreciate that question. There is zero comparison. What you were talking about that is happening in downtown Los Angeles is about maybe 1 or 2 square miles of a city that is 500 square miles. In 1992, and you're absolutely correct, I was at the epicenter when it was occurring. It was a citywide civil unrest. It was the nation's worst in terms of the most costly, the number of people died, the number of people arrested. There is no comparison. And unfortunately, that is what is being pushed, as though the city is in chaos, there's civil unrest everywhere. For most Angelenos, they're like, well, what city are they describing? They are definitely not describing Los Angeles.